The passing of the Queen and ascension of the King have led some Canadians to ask questions about the role of the monarchy in this country. On Instagram, we asked, should Canada cut ties? Responses were about 50-50. Our producer Andrew heard that same sort of split when he chatted with people in downtown Toronto.
Should Canada sever ties with the monarchy?
I don't think so. I think it's working for us.
Do you think Canada should sever ties with the monarchy?
Yeah, I think.
It doesn't really sort of play a big part in how we sort of take decisions in Canada, so maybe we should.
I like the history and the heritage.
Maybe it is time for a change.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Whether you think it matters or not, support for the monarchy has been waning in Canada. According to a poll this past spring, about half of Canadians think we should abolish it. Only a quarter are in favor of keeping the monarchy. Canada's constitution makes it very difficult to cut ties with the monarchy. So tonight, we want to discuss what the King's role in Canada should be. And joining us, a former Queen's representative to Ontario, the former Lieutenant Governor David Onley. He's in Toronto. And David Chartrand is president of the Manitoba Metis Federation. He joins us from Winnipeg. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David Onley, we just heard from some people who are questioning the relevance of the monarchy. What does King Charles have to do you think, to address that perspective?
I think there will be a visit fairly soon, and I think the more that Canadians get to see him and interact with him as king, the more they're going to like him. And so let's take a look at this question 6 months or 9 months down the road.
And David Chartrand, what would you like to see from King Charles?
Well, maybe following in her mom's footsteps. Let's not forget when our country was going into some turmoil on the Constitution in Canada in the 70s and 80s, we're talking about separation, a divisive Canada. Canada is going to split. The Queen was Queen Elizabeth was very, very concerned. I think Canada is one of her favorite Commonwealth countries. And she was, in fact, Paul Martin Sr. was advocating her comments to us in Canada that she was very, very concerned with what was happening. She was even willing to lose the monarchy, if necessary, to keep Canada together. So let's not forget the role she played in that. So it's not just seeing what King Charles is going to do. We'll see what Queen Elizabeth already has started in keeping our country together.
Now, you're the president of the Manitoba Métis Federation, and we know of the long and complicated relationship between the Crown and Indigenous people in Canada. What role do you think King Charles should play in that regard, especially reconciliation?
Well, if you look at what Queen Elizabeth done in 1982 with the patriation, of course, for our Constitution, the inclusion of Section 35, which is talking about Indigenous rights and protections in Canada, which is now in the Constitution, which she actually signed April 17, 1982. I'm very, very proud of that. She was involved in making sure that the rights of Indigenous people were being protected in this country. So her role was very important. I think King Charles just has to continue to carry that same torch, same vision, same ambition as Queen Elizabeth, and working towards keeping Indigenous rights protected in Canada and ensuring that they're respected. I think it's one of the things that Queen Elizabeth was very adamant on her message.
And do you feel confident that the King will continue that, or maybe even carry that further?
Well, I met him several times, and he seems to have good characteristics, and at the same time, jokingly at the same time, he seems to be with the common folk, I'll use that phrase, and I think he'll have that same ambition. I think waiting that long to take over and learning from your mom every day, I think there's no doubt King Charles will be a replica of his mom. Because, he's the closest it's ever been with the Queen for 70 years in reign. So all my life, she's been our Queen. And so from my perspective, I think King Charles will probably try to carry the same torch and maybe put some more flame in the torch as he's going forward.
David Onley, King Charles has been an active campaigner for the environment in the past as Prince. Do you think he will be able to continue with that?
Absolutely. In fact, we do need to take note of the fact that he's been well ahead of the politicians. He was talking about the environment and the need to relate to the earth years ago, decades ago. And at the time, he was ridiculed by many in the media and misunderstood by many other people. And now, of course, it's all this time later, and he's fitting right in with the mainstream notions in terms of the environment and our relationship to it as people.
But here's the potentially tricky thing, though, to follow up on that, is that there are many people who feel that the monarch is a figurehead in Canada, that that's the role she or now he ought to play and nothing more than that. So should King Charles have any kind of influence on our government when it comes to any kind of policy issue, but let's say specifically the environment?
That's a very good question. I think we do need to take into account the fact that as monarch, he has the authority, as does the Governor General, and on the provincial level, the same powers, identical powers, and that is to encourage and to warn, and the right to be consulted. Now, I don't expect there be for a moment that King Charles would be flying off to Ottawa and saying to the Prime Minister, I need to be consulted on this, thus, or so. But there are ways to let an apolitical opinion be presented. And he has done that very, very well over the last several decades, as Mr. Chartrand said, and I agree with him 100%. He has learned at his mother's side, not just for years, but decades. And subtlety is his game, really, and he does it very, very well. And so when he gives a speech about the environment, our relationship to the earth, many people are going to be nodding their heads and in agreement. I certainly would and do. And as a result, I think he's going to surprise a number of people. And it won't be an overt process of attempting to directly influence the government, our government or the British government, but a way of saying, this is what I feel about the environment. And most people, I believe, will support him in that.
David Chartrand, I could hear the fondness that you have for Queen Elizabeth, that you had for the Queen, and the respect you mentioned that you have for King Charles, that you'd met him before. So let me put a question to you that we put to people in Toronto, and that was whether we should continue to have a monarch in Canada, whether we should continue with the King or Queen in that sort of role. How do you feel about that?
I without doubt, believe it should continue. I believe it's a very patriotic, also a very important aspect of the existence of where we're going. We're a young country. Canada's a very young country. Let's not forget that. And so we've still got a lot of learning to do in our country. And you had a question to David earlier about the impact or the role, given the fact they're supposed to be non-political or non-intrusive into the politics. But let's look at the Pope for a second. The Pope is supposed to be non-political, but the Pope makes a statement. It's accepted worldwide or impacted worldwide. No different than King Charles. If he is to come and make statements in Canada about things that are affecting, i.e. Indigenous people, for example, or the environment or other matters, people are going to listen. They're going to pay attention to what's being said. It serves us well in keeping our country together and united. And like I said, Queen Elizabeth was willing to give up her monarchy and leave completely out of the realm, the monarch, if Canada stays together and keeps it together. That was her primary ambition. So it shows you again the compassion for the country of Canada is still strong, and I'm sure it'll resonate right through to King Charles.
Well, we're hearing lots of opinions now from many, many people about the future of the monarchy in Canada, and it's been interesting hearing from both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.